welcome back to another episode of the Dark Crystal Podcast. I'm your host, Mikey, and this is my co host.
I'm Andrea.
And today we are going to give our review of episode 1. And we will do a spoiler review as well. But first up, we will do our non spoiler review, and we'll let you know. We'll probably take a break and then get into the spoiler review. That way, you have time just in case you haven't watched it yet and you're somehow stumbling upon this podcast and you want to get into the Dark Crystal. You can hear a review of our thoughts of how we feel about episode 1. And then, if you decide, hey, yeah, I do want to watch it, you'll be able to go watch it and then listen to the spoiler part. But before we get to that, I kind of want to give some credits to the writers. Now, we did an episode where we went over the director of the episodes, which ended up being Louis Leterrier. Leterrier directed all of the episodes, and we did a couple of the writers, but we did the writers for the main writers who got credits for those. So I just kind of want to go over real quick. I'll just go through the list of all the writers that have credits on here, or at least according to IMDb, because I want to give everybody who is a writer who has writing credits some props for this, because we have the puppetry, we have the lore from behind, but if you don't have a good story behind it, but behind the puppetry and the beautiful imagery that we see on the screen, none of it would really matter if the story didn't make us care about the characters. So we'll give some props to Jeffrey Addis, Will Matthews, Richard Elliott, Simon Rakiopa, Carrie Drake, Margaret Dunlap, Javier Grillo Martrix, J.M. Lee, and Vivian Lee. That's everybody according to IMDb that has writing credits on the show. Definitely want to say thank you to everybody who had a hand on working on this. So I think
thank you.
Yeah, I think we got most people covered now. We got the puppeteers, voice actors, directors, writers. I just want to thank everybody because I am really loving this show. So I'll just get into my review of, this is the non-spoiler review of how I feel about episode 1, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, for me, as somebody who was a movie watcher as a kid, right from the beginning of this episode, I'm getting the feels. It's transporting me back to my childhood of watching the original movie. But I think it does a good job of making it so that you don't have to have seen the movie before, because they, just like in the movie, it's just throwing you into a certain situation. The TV series, or the Netflix series, is also just throwing you right into the middle of a situation. But both the movie and the series have narration in the beginning that let you know what's going on in the world, so that you have some context of what you're getting yourself into. So I feel like that they did a really good job with that. The visuals, the puppetry, the voice acting. I loved everything that we got here in episode 1. Now, if there's one thing I would say about episode 1, I would say that, if I was going to criticize it for anything, it's got the same issue that most series have for episode 1, which is normally, would be your pilot episode, and that is it's introducing you to all the characters that the show is telling you these are the characters that are probably going to matter the most, and they're going to do it in a certain time period. In this case, we have the runtime for this episode is like 1 hour and 1 minute, and they have to show you all the settings in this world and all the characters in this world they want you to know and want you to start caring about right from the beginning. So sometimes it kind of jumps back and forth pretty quick between characters, scene to scene. So sometimes you kind of, it seems like a fast pace that you're trying to keep up with what the story is trying to tell you. But I don't think it's too out of pace. That's just one thing I noticed, and it's a thing that most series have in the first episode. But overall, I mean, for a show to get you in to it, I definitely feel like this is a good episode that it would definitely, if you watch this episode, it's going to get you, it's going to pull you in. You're going to just see the the visuals of this show. You'll go into the show probably hearing, oh, they did this show with puppets. Then you're going to see them on the screen, and you're going to go, wow, they did this show with puppets. It looks so amazing. Right from the beginning, you're going to hear some of the voice acting. I mean, they open up again with the narration, and you're going to hear Sigourney Weaver, and right there, automatically, you're probably going to recognize Sigourney Weaver's voice, and you're going to go, oh, they have some big name actors and actresses in this show, so they must be taking this pretty seriously. So I think they did a really good job with episode 1. If I'm gonna give it a score, we didn't even talk about doing this, but we might as well just give it scores. Like we'll do like 10 out of a 10. I would give it 9 out of 10 spoons. I'm not gonna give it a perfect score just because, again, it has that one little minor aspect that you might not enjoy about pilot episodes for any series, where it seems like you're getting introduced to a lot of things very quickly. But I think they do a good job of making it all come together at the end. And I absolutely loved it, and I'm really, when I finished this episode, I was excited for the rest. Andre, what about you? What's your non-spoiler review for this episode 1 and how it made you feel?
Well, I definitely felt like when I started watching it that I was watching a movie. It was just from the beginning to like the end of it, that episode. So yeah, I had in mind what I was going to say. So there's definitely, it starts off with momentum for me. It definitely draws you in, and that, for me, like, I definitely need that, because if it doesn't have like any momentum in the beginning, I'm just like, okay, well, where are we gonna go with this? And towards the end, like, I definitely wanted more, of course. And yeah, that's my non-spoiler review.
Okay, so since I gave a score as something at out of 10, what would you give this on a rating scale?
Well, I would give it a 10 out of 10.
Okay, you give it 10 out of 10, so that's even better than me, and I'm the one that has a history of loving this series. So I was a little bit tougher than on you, and I'm the one who loves it. So I think overall, anybody who's getting into it, they're definitely gonna love it if they come into the mindset of knowing that this is a fantasy show, and it's going to be puppets. When I feel like it's definitely going to make you any preconceived notions anybody has about hearing about a show that, oh, they're doing this with puppets, once they get in and actually see the visuals, it's going to be thrown out of the window. And like you said, the show actually, like I said, the narration, they give you the narration to let you know what's going on in the world, but then they throw you right in the middle of things. So like you said, it has momentum. You could tell like this is moving forward, this is going somewhere. It's not just hey, it's not like, I compared it to pilot episodes for some seasons where you're just getting introduced to characters, and all they're doing is introducing you to the characters, and you can't see where the show is going. With this, like you said, it has momentum. You can see that, okay, they're introducing us to the characters, and they're gonna be going somewhere. They have something to do.
Yeah, that was my thought. Thank you for elaborating on that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I could put your thoughts into words for you. But yeah, that's a non-spoiler review. Andre gave it a 10 out of 10. I'm 9 out of 10. So let's go ahead. We'll take our break here. Then we'll come back and we'll do a full-on spoiler review for episode 1. Okay, and we're back, and let's get into this review. And I realized I didn't even mention the episode name. I just kept saying episode 1. But we are covering, this is a spoiler review for End Begin All the Same. This is, of course, episode 1 for season 1. And I'll just spoil this here. For the episode names, all the names of the episodes are all quotes pulled from the original movie, so I think that's pretty cool. That's another thing for me, being a fan of the original film. I nerded out when they released the episode list, and I saw all the titles. It's like, oh, those are all lines from the original movie. So I thought that was cool. But let's get into the spoiler review now. So, again, if you have not watched season 1, episode 1, and begin all the same yet, then turn this off now, go watch it, come back, and then listen to this. Here we go. So, to open up the show, again, like I mentioned in the non spoiler part, we got Sigourney Weaver. She's opening up with narration, and she's giving us the setting. She's letting us know that this is we're on the planet of Thra, and it circles 3 suns, and at the center of this planet is the crystal of truth, and it's the heart of Thra, which is also the source of all life on Thra. She lets you know that Agra was the one who was protecting the crystal, and because it was the source of all life, and Agra was closest to the Gelflings, and these Gelflings. They have 7 clans, and the 7 clans were living in perfect harmony, and everything was in balance. But let's see here, these beings from another world came to Thra, and they threw off the balance. And these beings were, of course, the Skeksis, and then the Skeksis, they give Agra this orrery so that she can travel outer space and the planets in the universe. And Agra is very tempted by that, so she does that, and she leaves the crystal in the hands of the Skeksis. And during this time, they declare themselves the Lords of Thra, and this was almost 1,000 trying to go now. And I know a lot of people. I've seen people asking, what is a trine in comparison to an Earth year? And so again, a trine works a lot like an Earth year, where the planet, for their planet, when it goes around they have 3 suns. When their planet circles, goes in orbit around once, they consider that a year. And from everything I've ever read in the lore of things, that a trine, maybe it's not exactly the same length as an Earth world, but it's something. They have always described it as, it's something similar to an Earth year. So about 1,000 years ago is when when the Skeksis declared themselves lords. And then they also let you know here that, they showed us a shot during this little montage of the crystal of truth, and it was a very nice, white, bright, glowing crystal. But now the Skeksis, they are stealing from the crystal, which is now the dark crystal, and it's all purple and dark and ominous. And the Skeksis are using this crystal to steal its power so they can cheat death. And that's how you kind of open up the episode. You see the Skeksis gathered around the crystal. These beams of light is going directly into their eyes from the crystal. For me, this opening, again, with the narration, put me right back into my childhood, and I was already loving it. What did you think of the opening narration here? What did you think when we got to this point?
Well, I thought it was pretty cool. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So were you like, okay, I'm in for this. Like, I'm ready to see more.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me a little bit like Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, that actually makes a lot of sense. So, I don't know if you know this, but Jim Henson and George Lucas were actually really good friends, and they actually really respected each other as filmmakers, and they actually collaborated a lot when Jim Henson was alive. They collaborate. I mean, obviously Jim Henson did a lot of the puppetry work and provided a lot of the puppets that were in the original Star Wars films.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. So would make sense. A lot of sense that it would remind you of Star Wars, and the original film kind of has a Star Wars feel to it as well. But yeah, so at this point we see the Skeksis again. Like I said, you see that beam of light, it's going into their eyes, but it's not giving them what they need. They kind of, they're trying to steal power from it, but it's not giving them exactly what they need. So they start complaining like, hey, we come here every day to, try to take power from the crystal, but it's not giving us what we need anymore. Maybe they've been draining it for too long, and now it doesn't have anything left. But the Emperor is like, you know what? The scientist, he has a solution. He's going to get it done. and so everybody's like, okay, so everybody leaves. All the other Skeksis leave, and we're left with the Emperor and the scientist in here, and the Chamberlain, of course. If you've seen the original film, he's very sneaky and tricky. So he's kind of off in the side waiting, and he's listening in. But the scientist reveals to the Emperor, you know what, I don't actually have a solution to what's going on here. We still have a problem. So this isn't looking good. So I mean, at this point, they're letting us know, yeah, the Skeksis have been in power, but their power has been waning, and they need to do something quick because they can feel themselves losing power and getting weaker. At this point, the narrator also tells us the Gelfling don't know that the Skeksis are doing this, but this is where they're going to find out, and this is where they're going to start the Age of Resistance. And then we also find out here that because of the corruption to the Crystal of Truth, there's this corruption that is actually spreading in the world of Thra as well. And we get introduced to Rian, a Gelfling who is part of the guard that protects and serves the Skeksis. And what was your first impression of Rian when you see him here? He meets up with Mira. They see these podlings are getting ready to take some food to the Skeksis, and Rian is kind of playing around with them, take some food, and Mira shows up, and they kind of have a little race to the top of the castle. So what's your first impression of meeting one of our main characters, Rian, here?
I thought he was fun.
Yeah, me too. I definitely get tell that this guy's a fun guy. He's in a position where he's got a serious job, but he still likes to have fun. He's not taking life too seriously.
Probably because he's still young.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So they race up the castle, and then they kind of get separated, and Rian loses to Mira, and they meet at the top of the castle, and we get the reveal. If you're somebody again who hasn't watched the original, we find out that Mira has wings because she is a girl, and so that's why she won. And then we get a cute moment here where they dream fast together, which is a form of sharing memories. That's what dream fasting is, and it is revealed that they have a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were you thinking of that? What were you thinking? Were you thinking, do you think they had good chemistry? Were you rooting for them?
I was rooting for them, and I thought they were cute.
Yeah, that was my first impression too. I was like, okay, yeah, like nice little dream fast memory we get here. That's pretty cute of them. They had this fun little playful time together, and it, Mira ended up having to be the one who was the aggressor to make sure that she got that first kiss. I thought that was cool. So I, definitely right here, they're trying to let you know that, hey, we want you to care about these Gelflings' relationship. They have a relationship. Here, they get, they see a spitter, and while they're in the middle of dream fasting, and then the spitter interrupts them, and then they need to go inform the captain. They meet the captain, and it's revealed that the captain is getting ready to escort the Skeksis there to the Gelfling capital to go meet the Almadra. And during this, we get a little back and forth between the captain and Rian, because the captain leaves another Gelfling in charge, and it is revealed that the captain is Rian's father, and so he's upset that somebody else is going to be left in charge. He feels like he's ready to be left in charge, and his father's like, hey, I know that you took some of the food from that was supposed to be for the Skeksis, and you're just running around still playing games. So he's very much, being like, he's not giving his son any special favors. What's your initial thoughts? What were you thinking about the father when you first meet the father here of Rian?
Well, my first thought, at least, was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense that he's his father, and also that, of course, he's trying to be hard on Rian just because he probably wants him to follow in his footsteps one day, and he's just so young and just playing around like that.
Yeah, definitely. Not giving him any special flavors, being giving him some tough love to try to get him to be ready. So, at this point, Rian doesn't tell his dad about this bitter, and Rian's father and the Skeksis, they get on the carriage and they leave to go to the capital. And then Rian tells Mira, "Hey, you know what? I didn't tell my dad about this bitter because I want to go after it myself so that I can impress my father." Which for me was telling me, okay, Rian, it's not that he doesn't care. That's not why he's so playful. It's just that like you said, he's young, and but he does want to prove himself. He does want to, his father to be proud of him. Just like my little guy here. I don't know if you can hear him in the background. Let's see here. And then they decide they're gonna go hunt this spitter, and they have another friend who's a guard, Gurchin, and we are introduced to Gurchin here, and they volunteer him to go help them. But then we go over to our next scene, which is happening in Harar, which is the capital, and this is where we see Princess Breya studying in the library. And she's there with a librarian who is there helping her retrieve books because she loves to study. And what was your first thoughts of Breya when we saw Breya? For me, I absolutely love Breya. She is somebody, to me, I can tell that she is very curious, and that's what I love about her. She's always looking for more, and trying to study and gain more knowledge, which I really like about her. What was your first impression of her?
Yeah, I like that about her too. And for some reason I thought she was kind-hearted in the beginning. Just she came off that way. And sweet.
Definitely those things for sure. I definitely think so. But she's in here looking through her books, and then Tavra comes in, which is Breya's one of her older sisters, because Breya is the youngest of 7, I believe it is, and so one of her older sisters, it seems like one of her older sisters that she's the closest to, comes in and says, "Guess what? I convinced our mother to let you attend the tithing ceremony," and it turns out that their mother, of course, since they are princesses, their mother is the All Madra, the Gelfling that is the Madra to all the Gelfling, because they live in a matriarchal society, and there's 7 clans, but then the Vapra, they have the All Madra, which is technically the ruler of all the clans. Breya is very excited about this because, again, she's very curious. She's going to get to meet the Skeksis, and she has questions for the Skeksis, and Tavra's letting her know, like, hey, maybe that's not a good idea. The Skeksis don't like questions or whatnot, but she's still very excited. And then again, we get another scene change here. We go to the caves of Grot, where we meet Deet, who is flying through the caves, and she's feeding these Nurlocs, these little big worm-like creatures. And then she goes along, and then she ends up finding a baby Nurloc and starts feeding a baby Nurloc. For me, my first impression of Deet, again, like you said with Breya, the same kind of thing. She's very sweet and very kind. For her, this comes in the form of her love of nature and animals. She's going to, she's feeding all these animals and very close with the nature, which is a part of being Groton. So, again, the first 3 main characters that we meet here, I'm a big fan of all of them. Really big fan of Deet. What was your first impressions of Deet?
Yeah, I thought she was sweet and nurturing and kind.
Yeah.
And very, I guess, talented as well. I mean, well, in the sense that she knew how to get around her way around the caves, but of course Olgron did.
Yeah, I don't know, but I agree with you that. I agree with you with that. But again, so we see her. She's feeding these worm-like creatures called Nurlock, and then she goes and she feeds. She finds a baby Nurlock and she starts feeding it, but it starts going mad. Starts going kind of insane, and then a really big one of the big Nurlock shows up, and it's also gone mad, and it starts, like trying to like bite and like eat Deet, and Deet, has to run through the caves, fly through the caves, and she narrowly escapes. But she is able to get away, and then we go back and we see. We're back at Harar now. The Skeksis that were at the Castle of Crystal before, now they're arriving to the palace at Harar. Yeah, and then Breya sees them. She wants to go get a closer look. She falls into the road, blocking the carriage, so the carriage has to stop. And the Skeksis come out. They see, they realize that it's a princess, so they invite her aboard. And Breya gets her chance to talk to the Skeksis, and of course she has questions, even though she's heard that she shouldn't ask them questions. She asks questions anyways, but they're pretty general questions. Like just so happens one of the Skeksis here is the Skull Creeper, and so Breya says she hears that they have libraries, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my library's endless." And Breya, being the curious person that she wants to seek knowledge, she wants to go there, but like, nope, that's forbidden. You can't go to our library. You can't read our stuff. And we get another Skeksis here that says, I was beautiful once. So this is the collector, and she says, I was beautiful once, but look at me now, and that's because I gained knowledge. And so that's what we get out of that interaction here. This is one of the first instances, like, you see how creepy these Skeksis can be towards the Gelfling, and it was just a very like,
they were super creepy.
Yeah, kind of like scared for Breya in that moment already, kind of like, oh my gosh, this is not
what are they gonna do? They could possibly do something, but they're just like, that the whole time.
Yeah,
you can't really tell if they're gonna like get mad at her, be upset with her, if they're just like
yeah. Hold on. Okay, so at this point they arrive at the castle. The Skeksis and Breya do, and this is where we first see the Maldra, and she does not look happy because obviously Breya is late, and she's there with the Skeksis. Her mother doesn't know why, but we feel like we've seen this type of situation with Breya and her mom before, and we've kind of got hints that Breya is kind of the black sheep of the daughters, I guess. We see the Almadra hail the Skeksis, and the tithing starts, and this is where the Gelfling are giving the Skeksis gifts to worship them. Meanwhile, we go back to a scene where the scientist is working on. He needs to work on something on how to get the crystal to, get more power out of it for the Skeksis. So what he's done now is he's built a machine that can draw power from Thra. Because they can't draw the power out of the crystal anymore from Thra itself because it doesn't have enough power. So he needs to get it from somewhere else. And so this machine, he turns it on, and it actually takes a hold of him. He starts looking at the crystal, and it takes a hold of him, and it actually starts to pull the scientist. It's pulling on him. It's pulling. We see like this. We finding out later on in the episode, we find out it's essence. It's pulling the essence out of him, but luckily for the scientist, the Chamberlain arrives and he turns off the machine. The scientist is kind of feeling sorry for himself, going, "Oh man, I haven't done it. The Emperor's gonna be so mad with me." And the Chamberlain's like, "Okay, well, you know what? This is actually great. You know, maybe instead of making something that would have the crystal give us life, you've done something that it can take life. And if you can figure out a way to harness the life that and the power that the crystal is now draining, then we can just harness it for ourselves, and then we will take it." So we already kind of see here the Chamberlain and how he's able to manipulate situations and put himself in a better position. So what would you think of this interaction here?
Well, I was thinking that, oh gosh, I wish the Chamberlain didn't come in and, at that moment stop.
Yes, of course. I mean, us knowing that the Skeksis are bad guys, it would have been, probably a lot better for the Gelfling for the scientists to not be saved. But I think that would have, just like any show or movie plot, that would kind of kill it there, and then you wouldn't have much of a show to go on for the rest. But right. I get your sentiment. Definitely have the feeling of like, oh man, you could tell the Skeksis are so mean and cruel that you just kind of want him to have his essence drained right there. Right. But again, they're able to figure out, hey, we'll figure a way to harness this essence for ourselves. But then again, we go back to another scene where Deet, now she's at we earlier we saw her escape, and now she's made her way. She has found what we come to find out is a sanctuary tree, which is this big huge tree with this big huge root system. And she hears the tree talking, and he reveals that the creatures are going mad due to this thing called the darkening, and it is corruption that is spreading and threatens all of Thra. The sanctuary tree reveals that he's been actually holding back this darkening for centuries, but it takes a lot of power out of him, so he's not able to hold back the darkening any longer. And then Deet here dream fasts with the tree, so she could see for herself what is going on. And we get a whole bunch of visions here. We get all these dark montage things that Deet sees here. And, it's actually pretty, this is one of those moments, as, it could be kind of scary for a child, but this was the kind of stuff I loved from the original film. When I was a kid, it was like, this kind of stuff that was like, oh, this is weird and creepy, but really cool at the same time. What'd you think of this whole dream fasting segment that Deet has with the sanctuary tree?
Well, I thought it was wonderful, and that a Gelfling could dream fast with a tree was another thing that I didn't think could happen either. So it makes you kind of wonder, could they dream fast with other things too, other than Gelfling? But yeah, just to see all of what she saw, like all that happening, you just like wonder how did it get to be that way or that bad, and it was crazy.
Yeah, well, and then the other thing I liked about this thing too is like it's showing a lot of stuff that might happen in the future, because some of the stuff that we see in the visions here that Deet is having is of Deet herself, and it's not her currently. So you're kind of like, well, especially one of the last visions that we see of Deet there, and she's all like got purple veins and like this like crown of thorns and stuff. So it's just like, whoa, like what's going on? Where are we headed? Like, what is going to happen here?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, so they dream fast, and she sees those visions, and then again we cut to a scene where we are with Rianne and Mira again. They're excited to go on their hunt for the spitters. Gurjin is with them. He's not as excited, so he kind of stays in the tunnel. We see Rianne and Mira again here. They want to really set up the fact that they are, in that they have a relationship together, because we get to see them kiss here. And then it cuts back to Gurjin, and he sees the spitter. So he calls out to them, and they all start going after the spitter. And the spitter goes down into the catacombs, and through their conversation, it is revealed that Gelfling aren't allowed down the catacombs; they're forbidden down there. But Mira, being a girl, she has wings, so she flies down there, and once again, Gurjin decides, what, this is dangerous. We're not supposed to be down there. I'm going to stay up here. You got Rianne. If you want to go down after her, you go down. So Rianne goes down after her. And, obviously he's a lot slower because he has to climb down. Mira's already way down there, and she's already walking around the catacombs because she has wings. And then she runs into the scientist, and that's where we transition scenes again. But obviously we know that Mira is in danger here. So we cut back to the tithing, and the Gelfling are giving their gifts, and then they're accepting the gifts, and then this farmer husband and wife come up there, and they have they come up there and they have like a small plate of a couple of like what looks like rotten fruit, and their tithing, of course, is not accepted, and it's not approved. And then the Skeksis see that the farmer wife, she's got this necklace, and it turns out this necklace was her mother's, and it's got like her dream etchings on it. And that's what the Skeksis decide, hey, if you give that would be enough. And they kind of don't want to give it, and we kind of see here, because all the crowd starts booing, so we kind of see just how manipulative the Skeksis have become, that even other Gelflings are like, yeah, you know what, they should give up something that they are attached to, because you're supposed to give the Skeksis something good. So already Gelflings are against other Gelflings, so we see here that the Skeksis have done a good job of manipulating them. But in the background here, we see Breya again being very sweet. She's like, hey, you know what, we have stuff. Why don't we have so much, because we're royalty. Why don't we just give some of our stuff in place of them? And her sisters are like, no, we can't do that. That's not how things are done. And the farmer wife ends up having to give her necklace. Okay, but yeah, so this scene ends up with the farmer wife giving the necklace. Everybody cheers. They're happy that the Skeksis got something that they accepted. But again, Breya not happy. And the next thing we see is her back at the library. She's studying Skeksis law, and she is there again with a librarian, and she's like, hey, you know what, maybe the Skeksis want the Gelfling to be fighting each other. Maybe it's maybe we don't have to give them these things. They do it to keep us fighting each other. And then we see the librarian, like, his mood totally changes. Like, you know what, don't look any further into this, leave it alone. Don't go down this path. And then they fight over the book, and something starts happening to the book. It starts like lighting up. The librarian runs away, and Bray receives a vision in the library of this big huge symbol, and she has no idea what it means. So she wants to go tell her mother. Now we see her mother. She's wearing the necklace that was the necklace of the farmer's wife, and Breya, of course, is upset. She's like, hey, why are you wearing that? We need to give it back. And you know, her mother, the Almadra, kind of gives the argument of like, hey, you know what, you know, this was given to the Skeksis, and then the Skeksis gave this to me, and the Skeksis give the Gelfling everything. So if we give something back, then you know that's not respectful of the Skeksis, and we're not being very thankful. So we kind of see the fact that the Skeksis again, they have manipulated the Gelfling in just the way Breya had thought, and Breya says that she would give the necklace back. So what did you think of this whole interaction between Breya and her mother?
Well, I know I felt the mother was in the wrong for doing that, and just to see what the Almadra, like what her position is and this whole thing is. So it's sad. And for Breya to see that, what her mom is doing, it's probably like, why is this happening? What's going on kind of thing. Like, why are we doing this to our people?
Definitely. And because, I mean, you can almost kind of tell, I mean, to me, it seems like the Almadra, she kind of knows, like, maybe she has a feeling of maybe it's not right, but because she's in a position where she's benefiting, you know, she's not really doing much to change the situation because she's benefiting from the situation, you know?
Yeah.
But again, we changed scenes again, and this was the kind of thing I talked about. We changed scenes a lot here, going back and forth between our characters because they're setting up, you know, the situation we're in, and all the characters going back and forth between them quickly to set up the story and learn about them quickly. But we see here, Deet wakes back up. She's there with her two fathers and her brother, and then the Madra of the Groton shows up. Madra Argot, she comes to visit, and she checks Deet out, and she's like, you know what, you're fine. There's nothing that a bunch of stuff, you know, like little things that won't heal. And then Deet tells her that the sanctuary tree told her about the darkening and that she has to stop it. And the Ardra Argot says, Deet, you know, she's got to go tell the Almadra then. If that's what the sanctuary tree told her, then she picked a good Gelfling to be the one that has to go on this journey. And yeah, she tells her, you know, when you're going to have to leave here, and you're going to have to go above ground. You're going to have to, you know, there'll be the brightest star in the sky. You're going to follow that star to get to the capital and see the Almadra. And Deet doesn't even know what a star is, and you know, she you know, as Ardra Argot tells her, you know, there's a whole new world awaits you, and we kind of see that, yeah, wow, like this is how much like the Grotons are separated from the rest of the Gelflings. Like Deet has never ever been above ground. She doesn't even know what a star is or what one looks like because she's never been above ground.
Yeah, and I wondered like, just because she's been in the ground for so long, like what that experience would be for her to finally come out and be around the light and all the element.
Yeah. Well, that and then just not to mention, like I said, the Grotons are separated from all the other Gelflings, so she's gonna go out into a world now where she's literally, you know, figuratively and literally been sheltered from the rest of the world. So she's, you know, probably gonna find out, like, you know, for the most part, it seems like living in the caves down there, she's been very sweet with other animals and kind and loving, but she was maybe about to go out into a world where we know the Skeksis are out there, so she may be in for a journey to find out that, ooh, maybe things aren't always that great in the world. But yeah, again, we change scenes again here, and Rian is looking for Mira back in the catacombs, and we haven't found her. Rian hasn't found her. She's already been caught by the scientist, and now we see all the Skeksis are gathered in the crystal room in the scientist lab. and they call for a guest to enter, and it is Mira, and she's in chains. And Rian, now at this point, he has found a ledge that he can witness this whole thing that's about to go down. And what happens here is really insane. So the Skeksis call her in. They show Mira the crystal of truth, which of course we now know is the dark crystal. And of course the Gelfling does not know this has been going on, so she recognizes that the fact that, hey, this is not the crystal of truth. Look, it's cracked and it's not the right color. And so she's looking at it, and then they turn on the machine, and Mira is upset. They're hurting the crystal of truth, and then because she's looking at it, she can feel it pulling, and the scientist starts telling her, give it everything, give it your very essence. And then when he says that, he stabs like these prongs in her, and the crystal, like it had started taking his essence, now it's taking her essence, but he's got these prongs that go into these vials, and it takes her essence. And this is where, again, another spot, of course, where it gets really dark, because they leave the machine on and it starts working overtime. It overheats, and then we see Mira explode into nothing. Like, she just straight up explodes, vanishes. Like, it's not blood and guts, but she explodes, like, and then she's no longer there. So pretty insane dark stuff here. Like, what did you think of this scene?
Yeah, I thought it was really dark, and how messed up that whole scene was, and it definitely pulled you in and made you feel like, oh my gosh, what am I witnessing?
Yeah, and then I saw some people compare this to compare this show already to Game of Thrones or to Lord of the Rings, and I feel like it's a mixture of both, because Lord of the Rings, yeah, you have this group of people who are on this epic journey that they need to obtain this thing to save the world. So we're kind of gonna eventually see that here with our group of main Gelfling here, but also like Game of Thrones, the stakes are high. Like, they've already, throughout this entire episode, because we're getting towards the end of the episode now, they've been setting up and showing us that Rian and Mira have a relationship. So they want you to care for these characters, and then already, boom, episode 1's not even over, and we get the death of these are all brand new characters, so I don't know any of these characters at all. I'm already thinking, like, okay, this is one of the characters I'm supposed to care about, and nope, never mind, she's killed already. Just kind of like in Game of Thrones, where I kind of think of it like Robb, when King Robb, like, you're like, okay, cool, this guy's winning the war, he's really good, and then boom, all of a sudden he's killed. Well, boom, here we go, all of a sudden Mira killed, like just gone. So I kind of feel like it's actually a mix of the two. One where yeah, it's a great journey for Lord of the Rings, but there's not a lot of high stakes. But Game of Thrones, there's a lot of high stakes. So I feel like it's a pretty good mix between the two. But yeah, so now we see, so they collected her essence, and the scientist gives it to the Emperor, who he drinks it, and then he's like, oh, yes, he feels strong now. He tosses one of the other Skeksis across the room, so demonstrating that, yeah, of course, that, yeah, he's feeling powerful now. And then all the Skeksis, like, rush over, and they want to have some, too, because they want some of that power. And now we glance back up to Rian. He's watching in horror. Of course, he just saw somebody who he loved, like, explode into nothing. And then we see a little scene here where they show the scientist, he's like, oh, don't drink it all, and he pours a little bit in a vial, and he locks it away. That'll become important later on down the road, but just know that the scientist, he locks some of the essence away. And, the Emperor's celebrating. He's like, oh, man, we're going to have a big feast. The Skeksis, we've conquered death. This is great. And Rian starts crying, of course, because he's seen a loved one just get killed, and his tear lands on one of the Skeksis, and the Skeksis spot him, and the Emperor's like, we got to get him, so they all go chase him, and yeah, now the chase is on, and this is where the journey really starts to begin. The Chamberlain assures the Emperor, because we see the Chamberlain, he's very good at being sneaky and manipulating. So he's like, don't worry, like nobody's going to believe him, because if they don't believe, if they don't believe us, they worship us. And so if they deny us, saying that we're telling the truth, then they're really denying themselves. Again, he's really good at manipulating. And this is something that we can see in the real world, where some people, like, they get so pulled into something that even once they see it's wrong, they will still go with it because they don't want to admit themselves they are wrong. So that's pretty much what the Chamberlain is saying. Like, hey, these Gelflings, they worship us. So if they admit that this Rian guy is right, then they're going to have to admit that they've been wrong for worshiping us all for this last 1,000 years, and they're not going to do that. So he is, again, just a master manipulator. He says he starts giving this speech about how the Gelfling are weak and small and they want to be ruled. And during this time, we get a montage. We see Rian run away, and he's kind of running through the caves here, getting away. We see Breya. She's studying her journal, but we also see that the farmer's wife, she finds her necklace outside of her house. So we are to believe that Breya left the necklace there for the farmer's wife. And then we see Deet. She is being lifted up by the sanctuary tree up into the world above ground, and we see, hey, this journey, like, this has just begun now. This is where it's all going to start, and that's where the episode ends. Really good episode overall for me. Really good ending. Loved it. What did you think of the end of this episode?
I loved it too. It definitely pulled me in for more, like wanting to see more of it, to see where, like, what's going to happen after.
Yeah, I think they did a good job with that. Right when the episode ended, I was like, "Oh, I gotta watch more now. I gotta see what happens." Like, it really ramped up at the end of the episode, where it's like, "Oh man, things have gone crazy now." We just saw a Gelfling get exploded. We now are see, okay, Deets, she's going above ground. We see Rian. He's in the middle of running away from the Skeksis. Breya's in the middle of trying to uncover knowledge about the Skeksis. So yeah, really good overall stuff here. But yeah, that's it. That's the spoiler for episode 1. That's the review. I want to thank everybody for checking out the episode here and following along with this. Really loving the response to the show so far. We have a Discord, which is the Crystal Shards Discord right now. So come join us over there, hang out with us. We're going to be over there now that we're doing some of these episodes for our review episodes. We'll probably wait a day or two in between. So I'd love to get some conversation from you guys, what you think after we do these episodes. And maybe, we do this show on Anchor, which allows you to use the Anchor app to leave a voice call for the message. A voice message for the show that we could always add in for your guys' feedback on what you thought, if you guys want to be a part of the show that way. Also, we have a Twitter at Dark Crystal Cast. So I found out from Apple Podcasts, because we're still waiting to be on Apple Podcasts and all the other platforms right now. We're on day 7, and the support feedback that I got from the support at Apple Podcasts is that it takes 7 to 10 days. This is like the 4th podcast I've done, as my wife know. I've never had it take that long for a podcast to get approved. We're on day 7 here. I haven't got the email saying that it's approved yet, so that it goes up on there. So hopefully they're going to get that up there soon. That way everybody can listen to it anywhere they want to. But once it is officially up on Apple Podcasts, if you head there, leave a 5-star rating and a written review, we'll also give you a shout out on the show. We'll read your review here on the show and say thank you to you. But make sure you subscribe as well, because we're going to be doing these review episodes now. You're not going to want to miss it. But yeah, that's the end of the episode, guys. So thank you for listening. Until next time, remember that you are the Crystal of Truth.
Make your world in its light.
Bye.
Bye.